Hello and welcome to the Figma Beginners course, where you will learn the features of Figma as well as unravel several user interface principles along the way. This course will give you a head start on how to perceive and prioritize users' experience, all while designing an interface that promotes the purpose of the application, blog, or website that you're creating. The course is going to be short, smooth, and informative, especially if you're interested in understanding users' flow and usage of technologies nowadays. Just a note before we get into this course's details, there are no specific requirements for you to be able to take this course other than having a laptop, good Wi-Fi, and of course a positive mindset. If anything explained in the course needs more clarification, please do not hesitate to start a discussion in the course so I or any of your fellow learners can help you create the best versions of projects you can come out of this course with. Asking questions and having discussions regarding users' interface and user experience is extremely encouraged. Questions can be exceptionally useful not only for you, but for other learners as well. If you don't have any questions but want to let us know how we're doing, you can also leave a review in order to improve the course for yourself and others in the future. So, without further ado, let's get started. The things that you will be learning in this course includes the overall complete usage of Figma. This includes a lot of features such as designing, collaborating on projects through it, and receiving feedback directly from it. Now, if you don't have a great idea on what Figma is, I will firstly get into the concept of user experience, or UX in short. UX designs are a little different than just straight up web or app design. In fact, it gets us to dive into the customer's world and understanding their needs and pain points. When figuring out your target audience, you should consider working on different points, such as building a concept, brainstorming, and gathering information. After creating a specific target audience, we then start creating user flows, which navigates how a user is likely to use the product in assumed scenarios. After that, we would start creating wireframes, which are usually low-fidelity gray boxes and layouts. Wireframes are usually made to help you plan the overall placement and layout of your content, so it would be an extremely general draft without thinking too much about details like colors, fonts, designs, and so on and so forth. These details would be taken care of in the next step, which is prototyping. The concept of prototyping demonstrates how the blog, application, website, or anything you're working on will look like to the users and what actions or windows pop up when people tap on a button, for example. After going through such process, you would want to confirm with your potential audience or clients about the product's functionality, which takes place in the final step of testing and sharing for feedback. In this step, you would be gathering any comments regarding your work and then start to make changes accordingly. After receiving your feedback, you then send your work to front and back end developers in order for them to build your product. All of the steps that start from wireframing up to feedback adjustment are easily done with the usage of Figma. To elaborate more on the program, Figma calls itself a collaborative interface design tool. This means that people would use it to design whichever type of project they want, all while creating a prototype and sharing it within the program itself. Through Figma, you would be able to create components such as symbols. You can apply effects such as drop shadows or blurs. You're able to create artboards, which are called frames in Figma, and they also have pages, which we will discuss and learn about later on. Another feature that Figma offers is versioning, which is similar to other design programs such as Adobe Photoshop, where you can jump back drastically to an old version if you don't like something that you have created. A feature that makes Figma stand out the most amongst other prototyping programs and applications, though, is the sharing feature, where you're able to collaborate with people within a project and see them work on it with you at the same time. This gives greater and more flexible access to team projects, especially with the commenting feature where you can very easily and directly receive any notes regarding your work. Finally, aside from its main purpose, which is prototyping, you're able to help the team who will be building your work, such as front and back end developers, like I mentioned earlier, by copying codes of certain features or objects within the prototype of the design. I will be very obviously demonstrating that within the course. Now, there are countless of tools out there for user experience and user interface design, but Figma's collaborative feature makes it the most beneficial out of that variety. And in this course, I want to introduce you to Figma and get you up and running with the concepts and features you'll need to know in order to start your first design project in Figma. In this course, we will be covering some important topics in the user experience world. This includes this very brief introductory class, discussing how to shape and understand your audience with user research, as well as discussing user interface principles. So, after the introduction phase of this course, you should expect to proceed into the usage and creation in Figma much more efficiently. Afterwards, we will look into the process of drafting, which starts with mapping users' journey in order to plan what we would want to create in Figma, and then get into the program straight away. We will later be going through the first phase of user interface design, which is wireframing, and afterwards we will look more into the prototyping phase, where we will have denser practical work classes. The prototyping phase will be covering every feature you have access to on Figma, and after that, we will apply everything mentioned in the course together. Throughout all of the chapters of the course, I will be assigning you some practical work or some discussions that you can answer in order to keep everything you've learned fresh in your memory. Participation is optional, but 100% encouraged. For example, I would like to ask you guys now, what feature are you most excited to learn about in this course? As a conclusion, we have a fair amount of topics to touch on, and in order to cover them all very easily, our next lesson will be covering the base of user interface design in order to be able to build up an entire successful project. So, good luck, and let's get right into the course. In an industry devoted to specific groups of people who will be using your product, service, or application, research is the key to reaching them in the most efficient way possible. We ask questions, take notes, and try to grasp any kind of information we can obtain. Then we test our work's functionality throughout the design process. So, what is UX research? UX research, or as it is sometimes called, design research, serves countless purposes throughout the design process. It helps us identify what the audience needs in order to navigate through our model, and then it shapes the purpose of creating such model, as in why we're designing the specific application. Maybe you're designing a health tracking application, for example, so you would define your application and plan its purpose by defining a distinct feature, such as maybe easy for adults to use. All in all, research improves our work, understanding, and the practicality of our products. As UX designer Mark Kunievsky puts it, design research is the process of understanding the impact of design on an audience. And I think it sums up all what I mentioned now very well. Obviously, after this brief introduction about user research, we're able to conclude that our work all starts with our users. By collaborating with potential users, we would be practicing a user-centered design, which is crucial to creating a successful product for our users. As you will be researching, though, empathy during research is another key to a user-centered design. Empathy, in this case, means to put aside your own assumptions and instead see things from someone else's perspective. Remember that you are not the user. So when putting the actual user first, you can approach your concepts in a way to make their experience much simpler. This helps the user build an emotional connection between themselves and the product. Now, you might be wondering, why are you starting this practical course with theoretical information? Well, let me tell you what happens when you skip the user research step. Professionally speaking, it may put the organization who you're designing the project for at a disadvantage in the long run. The products you're producing might have great features, but they might not solve the user's problems. The product might not be comfortable for the user to use because false assumptions are placed within the function of the product. The product might also cause confusion for the user. There are so many more instances that you might find yourself facing with the neglection of user design research. While user research informs design, though, it does not immediately provide solutions to problems. This is where the exploration of ideas and design iterations come in to help you reach to the solutions that you need. In addition, there is no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to these things. Just like how a one-size-fits-all clothing garment might fit all sizes, it looks completely different on these different sizes and serves a completely different style to each. It is our job as UX designers to define and understand contexts for the projects that we work on. The criteria that will help you gather the right plans for your project are quite simple, which are be specific, be focused and relevant to what you're trying to understand, make your ideas practical with the resources that you have, and be flexible with your methods. Now, you would approach user research in its early stages by asking yourself questions like, what do users need, or what is already working and what isn't? And after developing your ideas and building wireframes and prototypes, you will need to evaluate your overall work and validate whether your designs are serving their purpose efficiently or not. You do that by asking yourself, do users understand how my product works? Or can the users find out what they're looking for easily, and so on and so forth? So, as a conclusion, we're able to realize that user research is an extremely important part of the UX design. When it is done right, of course, it contributes to a great product experience for its users, which would help them keep coming back to use your products more often. Moving on to the final theoretical part of this course, here are 10 principles of user interface. Just like how design principles exist in fields like logo design, photography, etc., it is very advised to consider in our prototypes. When looking at our first unofficial draft of a project, it would be good to have the principles as a checklist to ensure that your design is guaranteed to be successful. The first principle is simplicity. You should try your best to keep your interface as straightforward as possible. Let's take a look at Facebook's layout, for example. Its identity is clearly shown, all while demonstrating to its users what they need so easily and directly. So up here we can see the logo and some of its visual language, which is very straightforward and simple. And meanwhile, we are able to see other people's interactive actions, such as their posts. We're not overwhelmed with content, but at the same time, we're able to distinguish the difference between the company itself and its users. The second UI principle is support. You do that by providing users with a variety of ways to complete a task and allowing them to divide the work into subtasks or personalizing their approaches towards their audience. For example, again, Facebook would communicate directly and ask you what's on your mind with your name at the end of the sentence when you're about to post a status, for example. So, first of all, when you press on the tab where you would be creating a post, you will instantly get a window or a new page that asks you what's on your mind with a lot of different options, and you can go on with it by simply pressing on post. Additionally, another application or website that provides constant support that I would like to mention is LinkedIn. As you're creating a profile and you go through with the steps of profile creation, they support you by maybe gamifying your process into going from a beginner's profile into an intermediate's profile. In addition, one of the most important principles, in my opinion at least, is familiarity. With familiarity, we are supposed to build on users' knowledge of previous applications. A good example of that can be how icons are, because the symbols used are usually everyday objects or visuals that are associated with their functions. Usually, we're able to distinguish that this interface here is Facebook's, and everything around the page is placed in a way very carefully that we would know where we would find it. We all know that with these icons, for example, we have the home icon, the videos icon, the groups icon, the notifications icon, and the general personal feed icon, where everything is placed. And as we press on it, we can tell that Facebook is laying it out in a prioritized way. So more people are more likely to look at their pages, their friends, and so on and so forth, as well as having easy access to maybe switch between accounts and anything close to that. Similarly, though, another principle is clarity. The difference between familiarity and clarity is the fact that clarity is more focused on how clearly does an icon indicate its function, or how well does a subtitle explain what a button does. Meanwhile, in familiarity, it is more known, for example, that the newsfeed button would be placed on the top of a website, maybe Facebook, for example, or the bottom or the side of an application. As you can see in this LinkedIn example here, we're able to distinguish that a home icon is a house with its subtitle indicating it, as well as network would have maybe two figures that shows more than one person with obviously another subtitle. Post would be a plus sign because we're adding onto our account. Notifications are known to be bells, and jobs would have maybe a suitcase that typically indicates jobs. In this case, I am explaining the clarity aspects of it, but when I say that this bar is placed at the bottom, now we're looking at familiarity because we are all used to seeing these options at the bottom of our screen. The next principle is encouragement, where you're supposed to make the actions predictable and reversible. This could be done by ensuring that if a user presses on an icon and leaves the newsfeed, they would be able to find that icon again and use it later on. So, for example, here again, if I leave the home button, the home tab, and I move to network, I still have the home button very close to me and very reachable, which encourages me to go back to it when I'm done with my network. If the button tends to disappear, I would be less likely to go back home and look at other pages. Moving on to another principle, which is satisfaction. You want to ensure that the user is going to be using your product with a satisfactory end result that helps them keep coming back for more. In social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, for example, the likes, comments, and shares feature encourages a significant number of their users to keep coming back for more, or to keep checking their application, and so on and so forth. Additionally, on LinkedIn, setting up a profile and completing it, like I mentioned earlier, would show you how professional your account is. It will probably get you to fill out all your information in order to have a professional account. I also think that satisfaction leads to the most persuasive applications with a majorly successful number of users. They keep coming back for more, knowing that they are successfully completing something that they are desiring to do. Next, we have accessibility, where users should be able to access any feature they need. This does not mean that all features need to be free, but more of the idea that if someone old is using the application, for example, they will probably need more direct accessibility to the text layout option because they would struggle to go through a couple of pages in order to find the option of resizing their font. Another way to explain it is also how we would have, when we open our Facebook feed on our phone, on our computer, we can see all of the features that we are able to use within the page. So we have the Friends tab, the Pages tab, the Groups tab, and we can go on with it very easily, and we have very easy access to whichever thing we are desiring to reach to. In addition, we have the safety principle. For this concept, we must be aware that we are all humans who make mistakes. In order to help the users feel safe, confirmation messages, for example, can be crucial. By asking the user if they are sure they want to proceed doing something, maybe performing an action and so on, you're helping with keeping them out of trouble and protecting them when they make errors. Another extremely useful option would be the edit button. This example is very clearly shown on Facebook, which is very easily accessible. So after you send a post and maybe you've noticed you made a typo or you want to add more to it or maybe remove something from it, you can easily access it by editing the post. And if you've changed your mind about the whole thing, you can very simply move it to the trash and delete it. And they made it less permanent when you delete a post by moving it to trash, so that maybe if you changed your mind and you want to bring back the post, you can access your trash and bring it back. In this way, the user is able to access any feature that they need and fix any mistake that they have created and maybe want to go back from it. Another principle is versatility, in which the user interface should have a variety of interaction techniques, such as having menus, dialog boxes, shortcuts, and so on. In this way, not only would a user be able to have numerous options regarding their preferred way of working with the product, but it would also help with broadening your target audience. So let's say I'm a 45-year-old mother who is going through Facebook on her web page. I am more likely to access pages, for example, through this tab over here because I'm looking at the icon, I'm reading it very clearly, and I'm understanding that this is the pages section. Meanwhile, someone else who has more experience with Facebook would be able to very quickly move from their newsfeed to pages by clicking on the icon instantly. This kind of flexibility and variety helps with targeting different people at the same time and making it very flexibly usable for any age-targeted audience. And finally, we have the personalization principle, where you allow your users to customize some features of the interface to their liking. For example, maybe you would have your profile be private or public on Facebook, or one strong example that I like about Instagram is the sensitive content control, where you're able to control how much sensitive content you would like to see in your feed and your stories, and so on and so forth. Now, I would like to move on by showing you guys maybe one example of what an outcome of a project off of Figma would look like. I will get into that by showing you a brief project that I have worked on before and show you a general layout of my projects. So initially you would be starting with a page that helps you with going through your scenarios, and then from there you would be working on your concept very slowly, and your end result would be played in this way. So we have the window that helps us test our product and see whether it's going well or not. The template shows very clearly the product that you've created the application or website or blog or so on and so forth for. In this case, I chose an iPhone, and then I would go on with the scenario that I want. And here I'm demonstrating for you guys how it would look like after the creation of a project of mine, and see how things would go on as you have created your own prototype. And after you're done with the creation of your prototype, you have very easy access to how you want it to look like, and you can test it as freely as you can in case you think something's too small, something's too big, and so on and so forth, so that you can fix it before sending it to your fellow front and back end web designers. So we have the design features, which we will be talking about, as well as the prototyping feature, which connects everything to each other. And we will be discussing other features such as inspection later on in the course. And that would be it. If you're as excited as me in starting with the practical stuff, let's get right into it. Finally, we are able to dive deeper into the Figma world and explore all of the features that it offers as a website and an application. If you guys would prefer to use the website rather than the application, then feel free to do so. The features are very similar and they have very small differences, which I will be discussing in a minute. But in case you are still interested in downloading the app, I will be showing you very soon how to do that. Now, you might be wondering, what is the difference between the Figma browser application and the desktop application? Well, you see, it varies according to your own preference. For example, the desktop application has a more direct option without distractions in browsers. So maybe you have something opened in another tab that keeps distracting you. Maybe you want to be productive, but you get distracted by maybe online shopping or something like that. You can always avoid any kind of distraction through the desktop application. As for the browser application, it doesn't take up any space on your PC or laptop, and switching between tabs can be more easy. Both work greatly, and the choice depends on how your work style is. For example, I am used to using the browser application just because my references would be on different tabs and it would be difficult for me to move from application to application. So from the desktop app to maybe a browser or a PDF, it's going to be too complicated for me. But at the same time, I do think that the desktop app is very useful for anyone who is trying their best to be as productive as possible. Now, without further ado, let's start downloading the app for anyone who prefers to download the application. What we're going to first do is we're going to go on our browsers. It can be anything from Safari, Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, you name it, it's okay. And we're going to go to figma.com/downloads. And here we're going to have 3 different things that we're able to download through Figma. The first option that we are able to download is the desktop application, which is what we're about to download right now. And then we have the live device preview, which I will be explaining in a second. And then we have the font installers, which I will also elaborate on right now. For the live device preview, it gives you a more clear idea of your work, and it shows you a greater detail when it comes to previewing what you want to do. And the font installers provides you with the fonts that you can't find in Figma, since the fonts that Figma offers are pretty limited. Now, we're gonna just be downloading the desktop app for now, but for future reference, you can very easily access the live device preview and the font installers from here. I'm going to start by downloading the desktop application for Mac OS, but like I mentioned, if you are using Windows, obviously you get to choose the other option. And here it is downloading. Now that it's finished, I'm going to go ahead to my downloads. and I'm going to move it to my applications folder. After that, I'm going to look for it, and I'm going to start installing it. It's going to ask if I'm sure I want to open it because I downloaded it from the internet. I commence